Well, good afternoon. I'm John Sangenberger, and I head the Alumni Relations Office at the Tepper School at Carnegie Mellon University. And we're so glad to have you join us for our alumni panel discussion on the challenges and strategies for supply chains in 2022. I think all of us know that supply chains are one of the hottest issues right now facing the global economy during this pandemic and continuing on into 2022. So we should have a lively discussion today. Before we begin our discussion, let me offer a couple of announcements. First of all, let you know that we do have our upcoming 4-part webinar series on the intelligent future, focusing on the key faculty research areas here at the Tepper School. Our first one later this month is going to be on the intelligent future of blockchain with Professor Ariel Zetlin-Jones and an impressive alumni panel. So we look forward to having you follow us with those for the next 4 webinars. We also have an upcoming program, our Intersect at CMU each year. We bring together CMU thought leaders, industry partners, and experts from around the world to discuss some of society's most pressing problems and potential solutions. At this year's conference, we're focusing on sustainability, the Sustainable Development Goals. It's going to be an outstanding one, so look for the emails that are announcing that. We've got a great lineup of speakers from across the university and outside. And then we also want to encourage you, we're getting ready for our welcoming you back on campus for our in-person reunion celebrations this spring. We're very hopeful for it, and registration will be opening later this month. So hope to see all of you who are a 1, a 2, a 6, or a 7 in your graduation year joining us for our reunion celebrations. Now, I'm delighted to introduce our speakers for today. First, our faculty host and moderator, Professor Alan Scheller-Wolf, one of my favorite professors here at Tepper. He's the Richard M. Sire Professor of Operations Management. He also has served as the Senior Associate Dean for Faculty and Research at the Tepper School. He did his undergraduate work at Stanford and then went to Columbia for his PhD. He has been very active at the school. He served as the co-chair of our annual Carnegie Mellon University Intersect conference that we're talking about on sustainability, one of his favorite topics. And he's been very active professionally on the board of leading academic journals, Management and Business Review, Management Science, Operations Research, and Queuing Systems. He's also the 2020 winner of the Best Publication Award in Environment and Sustainability from Inform. So he's a prolific scholar, a great leader here at the school. So we're delighted to have you with us, Alan. Thank you for leading us through it. Now let me introduce our panelists. They each have impressive backgrounds, which I can't adequately cover in just the short amount of time that I have, but let me introduce them. I think we're gonna have a great discussion. Melissa Cava is currently Director of Global Fulfillment for Devices and Research and Services at Google in Mountain View, California. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering from Western New England University and later her MBA from the Tepper School. She began her career at Pratt & Whitney through the Manufacturing Engineering Development Program and later moved into supplier quality engineering. After receiving her MBA in 2011, she joined Amazon with their Pathways program in Lexington, Kentucky, and later opened a new fulfillment center in the Dallas-Fort Worth area as a senior operations manager. She then joined Google, serving as head of fulfillment and logistics for the Americas before being promoted to the head of global fulfillment operations in 2019 and now director in 2020. So congratulations, glad to have you with us. Ted Decker is president and COO and the incoming CEO on March 1st at Home Depot, the world's largest home improvement retailer. Congratulations, Ted, we're so proud of you. In his current role, he's responsible for global store operations, global supply chain, outside sales and service, real estate, as well as merchandising, marketing, online strategy, and serving their pro and do-it-yourself customers across more than 2,200 stores and online. I think as CEO, he'll be responsible for everything. Ted joined Home Depot in 2000 as Director of Business Valuation. And over the last 20 years, he's held a number of strategic positions across the company, including their Chief Merchant and Executive Vice President for Merchandising. Before he joined Home Depot, Ted worked in business development and strategic planning and finance at Kimberly-Clark and Scott Paper. But prior to that, he began his career here in the Pittsburgh area at PNC Bank. He has an extensive international experience, having lived and worked in England and Australia. He earned his bachelor's degree from the College of William and Mary and a master's degree, of course, from Carnegie Mellon University, GSIA, now the Tepper School. He's been a great alumni volunteer and recruiter and speaker. He's also hosted summer receptions at his home in the Atlanta area. So Ted, great to have you with us. Now, Adam Musamelli is a principal and supply chain and network operations leader for Deloitte Consulting. He's based in Stamford, Connecticut. He leads a team of over 1,500 consultants who deliver global, highly complex supply chain transformations across all industries, so a wide perspective. He co-founded Deloitte Consulting's digital supply chain networks practice, which uses existing and next generation analytics and technologies. So he graduated with his undergraduate degree from West Virginia University. He served in the United States Air Force from 1986 to 1990. Thank you, Adam, for your service. His passion is extreme sports, high intensity workout, and CrossFit. So you might have some things to talk with him about afterwards. And last but not least, Mark Anetto. Mark is a board member at Flex International, which he joined in 2014. Since 2013, he's provided executive leadership consulting through his company, Leadership from the Mind and Heart, LLC. He was the Senior Vice President of Worldwide Operations and Customer Service for Amazon from 2006 to 2013. He pioneered the application of lean management and retail distribution, reinforcing the customer-centric culture of Amazon, which has been the foundation for their company's success. From 2003 to 2006, he was Executive Vice President of Worldwide Operations for Selectron, which was acquired by Flex in 2007. He joined Selectron after a 15-year career with General Electric, where his last position was Vice President of GE's corporate European operations. He also served with GE Medical Systems, now GE Healthcare, and was one of GE's Six Sigma pioneers and spearheaded the globalization and quality transformation of GE Medical Systems. Mark serves on the board of advisors here at the Tepper School, advising our dean. He's been a regular speaker on campus, a class reunion volunteer, hosted receptions for us. He's even established a scholarship at the Tepper School to benefit a student from the European Union. Great lineup of speakers. Now let me hand it over to Professor Alan Scheller-Wolf and let him lead the discussion. So thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I want to thank first all of our speakers for making time to be here. It's just a great panel, and I'm really looking forward to it, and also the attendees. Without much further ado, I want to direct the first question to Mark. We're hearing a lot now about nearshoring, onshoring, either that it's happening or that it's going to happen in the near future. You can think about the Intel plants being announced recently in Ohio, for example. If we look at nearshoring and we look at how that could work, how can we accomplish this? The labor costs are going to be envisioned to be higher. So how can we make nearshoring or onshoring work?
Thank you, Alan. First, I would like to apologize. You don't see my video because I had a small issue with health yesterday. So I'm in an hospital room and I can't turn my video on. So you're going just to see my smiley picture there. Yeah, I think it's perhaps the flip side of what's happening in the supply chain right now and what happened because of COVID. That there is a very strong push to onshore or at least nearshore industrial production, to bring production closer to the market. Now, it has been clearly in the past 25 years, a major driver of offshoring was indeed labor cost. But it also, in fact, added a lot of other costs, which were not always well measured by traditional accounting, such as warranty costs, return costs, obsolescence costs, all sorts of waste which were inbuilt in the long-haul supply chain. Now, the COVID situation and the current supply chain issues really made those costs so much more visible. As you know, there is all sorts of issues right now to try to procure goods that will come on a container ship from Shanghai to California, and then on a train, and then on a truck to finally arrive close to where the people that are going to consume the good are located. So the chance that we have is that with onshoring, we are going to be able to save many of these costs. As you know, right now, for example, the cost of containers has gone up by a factor of 5 or even 10 sometimes. But many other costs that were not apparent, the savings are going to appear. I always use as an example the toy industry. As you know, most of the retailers in the toy industry have gone bankrupt over the years because their business model was totally screwed up. They would, some marketing genius would forecast in February what kind of toys our children would want the next Christmas. Most of those marketing geniuses, by the way, had no kids. So they were looking at very cloudy crystal ball. And then some factory somewhere inside China or in Vietnam or wherever would manufacture those goods and make the toys. The toys will arrive by hundreds of thousands on containers in October or November. And by December 15 or December 10, we would know what the kids like. And usually what the kids like was not available anymore because the toy had sold like hotcake. And some other toys would stay on the shelves, would be discounted like crazy early January, and would finally end up in some form of a recycling, to say, a dump place in India or somewhere like that. And so that supply chain was, beginning to really suffer under the kind of defects, waste that existed. And I do believe, therefore, that yes, we would have to pay manpower more. Now, if, as I said, we could inshore, and certainly for semiconductor, it makes sense. For other very labor intensive, we could nearshore. There is a lot of opportunities in Mexico for the United States. There is a lot of opportunity in Eastern Europe, without speaking of Western Ukraine, which is perhaps a little more dangerous right now. But the rest of Eastern Europe for supplying goods to Europe. And as you know, also the other thing which is happening, which is very good, by the way, is that the China industry is working more and more in China for China, thereby also reducing the length of the supply chain. So I do believe that, yes, there will be an increase in labor costs, but I do think that we will compensate that increase, or perhaps even more than compensate, by the reduction of waste costs, such as the one I described.
Thank you. Thank you. That's sort of a fascinating view. And if we could move to a place where we could shorten things up and reduce a lot of the waste that, as you said, and I agree with you, is hidden, I think we'd all move to a better place efficiently. I want to now kind of go from the big view to a more focused view. One of the benefits of our panelists are that we have specific views. So I'd like to call on you, Melissa, specifically looking at this last year, which was admittedly very challenging, I'm sure, for Google, like everyone else. Can you tell us about what maybe your biggest challenge was at Google and how you helped mitigate it in the past and how you're hoping to avoid it in the future?
Absolutely. So last year, one of our biggest challenges in the fulfillment world was being able to bring enough labor into the warehouses to handle both our launch and our peak season with no delays. Specifically in the US, the demand was just so much higher than the supply. Our warehouses are run by 3PLs here at Google, and our vendors raised the rates approximately probably a dozen times or so throughout the year just to bring in enough resources to handle that busy time. Unfortunately, even during the busiest of times, we still had open recs. So we really, truly could not bring enough people into our warehouses. We were lucky, we were able to handle our volume, but it wasn't easy. So one thing we're doing to mitigate that challenge is to bring automation into our warehouses. That way, we don't need to bring in such an influx of labor during these busy times. Automation will truly help us, keep the same level of labor throughout the year, but still be able to handle all the peaks and valleys throughout the year through our launches and then through our, holiday seasons.
Yeah, thank you. I think the whole topic of automation is one that's ripe for a whole nother panel because that is incredibly promising. So I want to continue on our topic of, kind of industry expertise and now turn to Ted and ask a similar question. Obviously, home improvement and housing has been, booming over the past couple of years, and supply chains have been strained. So what specifically have you done at Home Depot to try to ensure that you can get the product and transportation and containers and all that other fun stuff to keep your goods rolling?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, Home Depot, we experienced just tremendous growth over the past 2 years. We'll have grown by about $40 billion in these past 2 years, and that translates to just an unbelievable amount of product and cube that move through our supply chain. And roughly about half of that, or rather 25% of that, is imported either directly by Home Depot for our private brands or from our supplier partners who are having product manufactured overseas. So it's truly a global supply chain. And nobody anticipated this volume. And in fact, in the early days of the pandemic, we reduced capacity. We took inventory out of the system as we went into lockdown in a number of states and in cities and municipalities, put restrictions on store operations. And in the early days, we were thinking, we could be shut down as a non-essential retailer. Fortunately, that didn't happen. And when so many people were at home, one of their favorite things to do, or maybe not favorite, but something they certainly did, was home improvement projects. And then the supply chain, as I said, exploded. And this was just a classic bullwhip. You had two factors. No one had the capacity and anticipated the volume, and you had a bullwhip effect in that you had an immediate dramatic reduction followed by an explosion of demand. So we've been focused on, and still are, product availability and transportation. Both of these still remain stressed. If you look at product availability, working with our supplier partners, we're trying to figure out, what's the most efficient product to manufacture? What are the best sellers? How do we get, the A and B velocity SKUs in our stores at the right sort of depth our customers need? And so we're doing a classic exercise of de-SKUing. So, Home Depot is famous for its breadth of assortment. Unfortunately, in these times, we've worked with suppliers and we've done things like if a manufacturer makes sandpaper and there's a pack of 1 unit, 5 units, and 15 units, we'll say, well, let's just focus on the 5-pack and don't make the 1 in 15 pack anymore. Just one example of where you concentrate manufacturing into the most efficient and best sellers. We've negotiated exclusive relationships with various manufacturers. Most of our suppliers supply both the retail trade, our direct competitors, as well as the commercial trade. So you're selling to wholesalers in distribution companies, as well as retail into Home Depot and others. And these suppliers cannot satisfy all their customers' demand. There's a lot of waste in the SKU we might pick, for example, that we want the manufacturer to manufacture is different from the SKU that someone else wants them to make. So we've been successful in expanding our relationships and exclusives where a manufacturer says, I can't service the market, I'd rather just service Home Depot. So something like Carlon, the blue electrical box, which is the product in the industry, they've decided in retail to go exclusive with us in shipping us all their capacity. And then lastly, in transportation, this has just been incredibly limited, and this is domestic transportation. Think of tractor trailers, over road, rail, and then certainly we've all heard about the ports in the international cargo capacity. So we're again scrambling. It helps to be bigger. We're the 3rd largest cargo container importer in the country. So we have long-standing large contracts with the largest international freight carriers. We've extended those in increased capacity. As Mark said, at higher rates, certainly, but we'd be well below spot rates that others are paying that are as much as 10 times 2019 rates. And we've done lots of innovative things in terms of getting capacity, including getting our own ships, which we're not in the shipping industry and we're not going to stay in the shipping industry, but we secured exclusive in 100% capacity of a number of freighters just scrambling to try and get our product across the Pacific. So those are just a few of the things that we've done to respond to this explosion of demand.
Thank you, Ted. Adam, I'm going to ask you to zoom out now. We've heard talk of some general trends, rising costs, de-skewing, automation, localization, or nearshoring, onshoring. Looking broadly, what trends are you seeing and what trends do you expect to see going forward?
Yeah, so thanks for that, Alan, and thanks for having me on the panel. So if we think about the future of supply chain, the first thing that comes to mind is I think we need to reframe what we mean by supply chain. The supply chain phrase, the language in and of itself, is likely no longer appropriate for what's really happening. Because if we think about a supply chain, I tend to think about a linear series of nodes, one-to-one connections. That's traditionally what we've had, and a lot of people have grown up in one node, maybe two nodes, over the course of their career. What's really happening now is that is very rapidly evolving into a nonlinear supply network concept, where you can think of a series of networks that are connected, many to many connections across those different networks. And depending on which industry you may work in, depending what job you may do, that may or may not be a new concept. But what has changed pretty dramatically now is that this concept of a supply network can be operationalized thanks to technology and where the technical curve has gone. So, the ability to have very rapid dynamic responses across a series of networks, not just one or two nodes, is here. And that's being built out in any number of industries at any number of companies. The ability to be connected and synchronized from the data level to the information level, so you can just make better decisions. That is being built out in any number of places across the globe. The notion of people and machines, so humans and machines working together to make more optimal decisions in virtually any part of the supply chain, is happening right now. It's really exciting times. Transparency, right? Visibility into what's happening anywhere within your network, within your organization, outside your network, in other networks, and what that might mean to solve some of the challenges that Ted, Melissa, and Mark brought up is happening. Ultimately, I think we're getting to a point where instead of making perhaps node optimal decisions, so I'm going to optimize logistics, or I'm going to optimize manufacturing, or within a plant or a line, we're very rapidly getting to the point where we can make network optimal decisions, right? Where there may be some puts and takes across the network, but overall, you're better off from an efficiency or effectiveness perspective. Just pragmatically, what we're seeing and how this is playing out. First of all, I should say, and perhaps as a little bit of advertisement for the upcoming webinar, sustainability, climate change, energy, it is everywhere. I've been doing this now for 30 years. 20 years ago, clients started asking us about sustainability and climate change, but what they really wanted to do was do some sort of corporate reporting on it and just understand where they were. It is now a supply chain issue, and virtually everywhere, every industry is talking about how do we go to net zero? What do we do with carbon emissions? What do we do with alternative sources of energy? How soon will they be around? How do we use them? Very much in line with some of Mark's comments, reshoring is a real thing. Taking time out of the extended supply chains that we've built over the past 2 decades is a very real thing. We found in pretty much any industry that the ability to plan, make to stock products, and manage the execution over those long lead times, really hard, right? Leads to a lot of waste, leads to a lot of inventory, leads to a lot of just storage in different places. Multi-tier supply chain planning, inventory management is happening, multi-tier illumination is happening, forms of what I like to call a cognitive supply chain. So making assets that perhaps are sensorized, but don't use the sensors as more than data gatherers to help them think is happening in logistics, in procurement, in manufacturing. And I guess I'd share, the last thing, this is the way we refer to it, but this notion of a digital thread. So how do you take engineering, the requirements, the engineering bomb that's been created, and feed that into manufacturing and create a feedback loop so that you can make what actually you designed to make and understand the cost implications of that, regardless of where you are on the planet, is a very real thing. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, for all of us, and folks that will be alumni over the next couple of years, how we work is going to change because of this. If you have a supply chain career, you likely won't go straight up in an organization anymore. You'll probably zigzag around because companies are going to want people that can understand how the supply network works and be able to manage across a supply network.
Yeah, I find your kind of supply web or supply network image very compelling, because we tend to build long, thin ones, so to speak, that just put a bunch of time and waste in. And once you start doing that, you keep doing it. And so the thought that this could be kind of an opportunity for us to shift to something that will serve us better is encouraging, I guess, if we can get there. Before we get there, we need to start getting stuff through now. And I think what a lot of people want to hear is, how long is that going to take? So, Ted, what are your thoughts as far as, if I want my choice of 3 different sandpapers, how long until I can have that choice again at the Home Depot?
Well, unfortunately, it's gonna be a while. And before I hit on the near term, I think Adam's exactly right in what you're saying, Professor, is going to be the future, and it's going to be a web. It's going to be multi-node, tremendous amount of data, and perhaps overused, but artificial intelligence. It's going to go into forecasting and manufacturing and shipping and allocation, and it will be multi-node. And I think back when I graduated in 93, and the operations research classes still are very relevant, as much as they were challenging. That they're so relevant. And I remember our project was I think it was an oil freighter, big case that we had to work on. But all of that's just increasing in sophistication, and I don't think it can be done in a linear or even a multi-regression that we did back in my day. Anyways, this is going to be advanced models, and that you're going to need artificial intelligence and massive data sets, which is just so great for Carnegie Mellon, because who better to be at the forefront of that than Carnegie Mellon. But back to the sandpaper, near term, it is a challenge, and every node is challenged. So just some tidbits of where we are. We've all heard about the ports, and despite all the efforts, we still have 100 ships in counting anchored off the ports of LA and Long Beach. And if you're watching that count, sometimes it looks like it's going down, but not really, because the ports and the government have worked with the shipping companies, and they're all slow steaming across the Pacific, so that because they don't have anywhere to anchor, and it's an environmental issue. We've already had one issue with a pipeline. We have domestic transportation. They're digital boards that track demand per load. it exploded to 6 requests per each available load for every 18-wheeler. That's only gotten worse. It's now at 11 as of this week. Warehouse space, as Melissa said, we're scrambling with everyone else, trying to find warehouse space because there's so much product coming over. There isn't the transportation assets to ship it, so you got to put it somewhere. So you need to find warehouse space. Home Depot will be taking down 40 odd million square feet of incremental warehouse space. That doesn't get built and occupied overnight. Trucks, I mean, we think of our domestic vehicles or personal vehicles being challenged with computer chips and the like. To get a new 18-wheeler, 12 to 18 months. The latest, if we can even get the warehouse space and open the warehouse, forklifts are on a 12 to 18 month delay. So we're scrambling, we're maintaining assets longer than we would. We're not returning leased assets, and we're opening facilities with fewer forklifts than we'd like. Insult to injury, the Canadian government, certainly has to protect their citizens, but they've put a vax mandate on cross-border truckers. So anyone crossing into Canada has to show proof of vaccination. So there's all sorts of issues now with our Canadian friends, and I could keep going. It's a long list, and it's going to take well into 23. We thought maybe Chinese New Year that started yesterday would help for 22. We're going to go well into and past Chinese New Year of 23 before we see normalcy.
Okay, well, that's not really the answer I was hoping for, but I guess I'll take it. Maybe Adam can cheer me up to asking about a couple of other little things. So 2 of the products that pop out at one as far as shortages again, or sectors, let's say, are automobiles. Of course, if you wanted to buy a new car, you got to look far and wide, and much closer to home, empty shelves at the supermarket, whichever one you're shopping at. So these are questions that I get. How long do you think those might be relaxed a little bit?
Yeah, well, so I guess we'll take them one at a time. And by the way, the near and dearness of this has finally helped me start to explain to my family and extended family what I do. I've never been more popular at family gatherings than I am these days. So food and beverage in grocery stores, it's an interesting one. Certainly very different than auto. To hit the punchline, I'm hearing behind closed doors, we're probably looking at somewhere in 2023 to get to some level of normalcy. The advantage we have is the lead times are generally shorter in that particular space, and the bombs are much less sophisticated, right? However, the reason we are in the challenge we're in, and the thing to think about, it's largely a supply issue. Food and beverage and a lot of consumer products have seen well over a decade of a lot of consolidation. So a ton of manufacturing capacity has been taken offline. There's been some very public, headlines, private equity buys in the particular space that took a lot of cost out. We've had 2 decades of streamlining inventories. You couple that with some of the things that Ted, Mark, and Melissa talked about, global lockdowns creating, ripples across the supply chain. And really, at the heart of it, in both manufacturing and logistics, is we have a labor challenge. There's a lot of unfilled jobs out there. And when you add in the fact that we don't have enough labor, there's COVID-related absences. There's a shift. Folks want to do other things besides manufacturing because there's wages to be made in non-manufacturing jobs. It becomes a little bit tough. The other thing I just note, and this is a little bit more of a nuanced point, I think what we found in food and beverage, to your earlier point around these long, kind of linear, very narrow supply chains, is, food and beverage supply chains are a little more brittle than I think we thought. They really are lined up to a particular sales channel. The manufacturing assets are lined up to that sales channel. And the second buying behavior shifts into another sales channel, like it has during the pandemic, it's really hard for consumer products producers to shift over and meet different size requirements. So that channel shift has been a bit of an issue too. But net, we think 2023, automotive's a little different. Automotive, the real answer is a little bit of who knows. And the little bit of who knows comes down to automotive is going through a massive transition right now. I'm not sure we've seen this sort of transition. We certainly haven't seen many on this scale as they move from ICE or internal combustion engine to EV. I've worked at automotive manufacturers prior to becoming a consultant. I've worked at them again as a consultant. We're talking about massive mammoth supply chains, many moving parts, a lot of materials, and suddenly basically rewriting that bill of material with new materials, different materials, rewriting the routings and trying to figure out, the requirements to create effectively EVs if your name isn't some of the more popular EV providers, right? That means you have to be in the chip market. And once you get into the chip market and you're talking about semiconductors, the reality is we don't know when chips are going to be caught up. The Semiconductor Industry Association was predicting 2023, but everybody I talk to kind of says, yeah, who knows? And of course, it depends what type of chip you want. And, lead time production for chips, you're talking a minimum of 26 weeks, on the outside, 52 weeks, right? So when you couple that sort of long time to get critical materials to create the sort of automobiles the automobile industry wants to create with what's been just a massive demand spike across, in this case, the chip industry, right? 5G deployment, automotive, as I mentioned, work from home, PCs, right? Along with the fact that, of course, not all chips do the same thing. It's going to take a little bit of time in automotive.
All right, well, I'm not going to plan to get a new car anytime soon then. So there is this sort of brittleness that we've been talking about that comes with long specialized chains that are really good at delivering, specific things to specific places. And we're sort of talking now about developing webs or more flexible chains. One aspect of that we've talked about a couple times has been labor. We need the people to move the product, or we need the ability to move the product. Mark, looking forward, if we're going to move from one place to another, how can we get the labor that we need?
Let me address the labor question. But before that, I'd like to complement a little what Adam and Ted just said. So we all understand the challenge today, which is that the resources needed to man and to bring the assets to the traditional supply chain are limited. And as Ted was describing very well, if we keep on shipping stuff, we need more trucks, but nobody's there to drive the trucks. So I see, of course, the solution be, and as a good Carnegie Mellon guy, I see technology being the solution. Technology with people, that technology. So let's begin first. I want to share with the people that are today listening to us one simple statistic. I had the chance to work for an industry that revolutionized the retail industry. So I can measure and see the change that can happen thanks to a new way of doing things. Just let me give you a little number, which goes back now a few years. As you know, Amazon began by a bookseller before being the shop for everything. Just give you a number. When Amazon began to ship books, so the book industry was a very, very inefficient industry. In the United States, this is the United States number, but very similar in Europe. Out of 100 books printed, 45 were recycled, never read. And the reason, again, is that some marketing genius, again, in publishing would say, oh, it's going to sell very well, I'm going to print 1 million, and they would sell 10,000. And reciprocally, they would have other books that you could not find because the marketing genius based on guesswork. Now, Amazon return of books was 3% when the industry was 45. Why? Because thanks to e-commerce, we knew what would sell. We would put a book on the website before it was published, and we would measure how many people would look at that book. And we had something called the detailed page hit conversion rate. So we would know that, whatever, let's take textbooks, the conversion would be 50%, and perhaps other books such as detective novels, the conversion rate would be 20%. But we would know before the book was printed how many we would sell. Therefore, we would order exactly what we needed. So I do believe that technology, this is a very simple example of artificial intelligence. I don't even know if I can use that word, but we were beginning to understand through the direct contact we had with the consumer, what would really sell. And therefore, not only would not imagine all this book would be shipped before to a bookstore who would then return it. So imagine the waste in the supply chain, the waste even in the trucks moving books. So my point is that with new technology and new way of doing things such as e-commerce, and of course I say that with all due respect with Ted, who is involved still in traditional commerce with big centers, but as you know, even the big guys like Ted's business or like Walmart are also saying, whoa, you know, one of the best way for us is perhaps to become very active in e-commerce because e-commerce is so much more efficient. So I think that's a very simple example. Now you can, of course, go then further as we were speaking and as Melissa was describing very well. The way to deal with the lack of manpower, or perhaps, I don't know if I want to use the lack, it's not a job that people want to do anymore. So we better invent a machine to do, because that machine is not taking anybody's place. That machine is really allowing us to perform a service for the customer without making jobs, for example, in fulfillment centers. So just to give again a small example, what happened at Amazon. Originally, of course, Amazon, if you look at a fulfillment center, the two major manpower usage is stowing and picking, i.e. putting on a shelf the goods that the customers will order, and then picking, which is going to the shelf once we know the order to really shop for the customer. We pick, and then after that, there is packing and shipping. So my point is that we used to do that by people moving all over the place, right? And so people would, walk like literally tens of miles a day, and that's not a very value add. And on top of that, for some people, it would be even physically challenging. What we did is that now it's not the people that go to the shelf; it's the shelf that comes to the people. So the people still perform a very important act, which is either stowing or picking, because that's still very difficult to do for a robot, especially when you have something at Amazon, which is very different from most warehouse, that we have random store, which means that in a shelf, there can be anything. So it's very difficult for a robot to pick properly. However, it's good for men. The human beings can do that well, but now the shelf comes to the picker. So that's what the robotics is today. So you see, I'm describing robotics of today, which has replaced already literally millions of miles walking to do nothing else but walking, by people now making a much more value-add job. And then I am also speaking a little more of the future when I say that robots one day will be so intelligent and there will be shape recognition, which will allow them to even pick on a random store where there could be anything and recognize what needs to be picked. So I understand the challenge of today, and I don't at all I don't at all negate them, and I understand that, as Adam described and Ted described very well, and we know all of us when we see an empty shelf today how challenging it is. But I'm very confident in the future because I have lived through technology changing the world. And I believe that will happen, and it is happening. In fact, I think that if I had an advice to say to our students at Carnegie Mellon, and I do that when I speak at the operations team, etc., is I think that logistics is going to be an absolutely exciting field because logistics is absolutely dying for new technology solutions. And the best way to learn that, we have the chance at Carnegie Mellon to have one of the best business schools and the very best robotics school. And so I would encourage students and alumni to really work in that type of area where I believe there are some really exciting things to do for the future of the industry and also the future of the planet, because what I'm describing you is much more efficient when you don't ship 45%, you have to cut a forest in British Columbia, print the books, and 45% of them are never read. I mean, it's an absolute drama in terms of our environment. So I showed that you could have 2% of books coming back, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I've actually visited and seen those automated floors, and it's almost like a ballet, the choreography of the different shelves and what's behind it, the complicated algorithms, operations research, matching algorithms, if you want to be specific, shows you the way that we're going to need to use sort of the cutting edge analytics and mathematics with the human judgment to direct these things. So I think that is indeed a very hopeful direction. I'm going to shift us a little bit, kind of use prerogative here, because yeah, one of the major concerns I have is indeed sustainability, and I think I want to return there. Melissa, what's going on at Google with sustainability? What have you seen firsthand? Where do you see promising future directions? Because this holds the promise of making business better and kind of making the world better too.
Absolutely. So Google has actually been carbon neutral since 2007, and we have the goal of being carbon free by 2030. So I work in the devices and services organization, and our org has a mission of building products that will leave people, the planet, and our communities better than we found them. So specifically to my fulfillment network that I run, our biggest sustainability effort that we've been focused on is around packaging. So how do we get these products to our end customers in a sustainable way? So we have implemented 100% recycled material cartons and dunnage, have designed better fitting cartons for our products. We launch new products every single year. The size of those boxes changes. So making sure our cartons use less corrugate, less dunnage, we ship less air. We're even shifting our tape to paper tape with the goal of being 100% plastic free by 2025. So that's specific to my fulfillment network. Google in itself, this is a huge, huge focus, and it has been for many years, but really within Google, each organization has their own full list of initiatives that they're going after. So definitely one of our top priorities.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful example, because the idea of packaging is something that we live with in supply chains for a long time. And then we realize we have to get rid of it. And there's a huge amount of waste there. In general, if we're looking at carbon footprints, Ted, what sort of role does sustainability make in the decisions you're kind of taking now?
Very, very prominent role, as Melissa articulated. We're on the same mission, reducing our carbon footprint, which would include supply chain consolidations to get trucks off the road, putting LED lights in all our buildings, putting solar panels on our roofs, recycling our cardboard. So our moving boxes, which is a very big business for us in the store, all those moving boxes are post-consumer recycled Home Depot waste. So we have a circular, product comes in, we unbox, put to shelf, and then recycle the cardboard. In our partner, Pratt Industries, who makes our cardboard moving boxes, is then using that cardboard as their feedstock. Similarly to all of the plastic film wrap, we're recycling all of that. We're trying, it's similar to Google, to eliminate all foam, the EPS foam in our packaging, looking at size of boxes to improve density in containers, to reduce air, et cetera. So it's a huge impact. It's forefront, a lot of energy saving product development, water usage in toilets, in shower heads, electrical, we're almost exclusively now LED lights, incandescent obviously outlawed, very little even CFL, it's almost 100% LED. So virtually product line by product line, we are absolutely at the forefront considering environmental impact.
Thank you. I'm gonna kind of go to Adam here and maybe give a commercial for our next talk. We hear a lot about blockchain. Do you see inroads for blockchain in supply chain management in the future? And if so, what might they be, somewhat quickly, because we're starting to run up against time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are applications for blockchain. I think right now, though, exactly what they're going to be, specific use cases are being discovered and are less well understood. It's actually a focus of a group of mine working with a couple of clients in a consortium to talk about it. When you get to some of the things that I think originally a couple of years ago people talked about in the blockchain world, like transparency and the ability to see something, the genealogy of something as it moved across the planet. In some industries that's valuable, but many less so. There are other technical solutions that give you visibility without having to create a first on the planet sort of technology to solve it. What's interesting, I think, is the immutability of what happens on the blockchain and what that can mean for supply chains moving forward, and perhaps how it can disintermediate some of the way supply chain works today as we think about that concept of evolving into a network, a web. So that's where we're pushing.
Great. I want to kind of give a high level question now. Optimism or pessimism, let's say looking three years out. I kind of know which way he's going to go. So let's start with Mark, because he's kind of told us.
I guess I'm the resident optimist here. But yeah, I think as I tried to explain before, my optimism is not based on just dream or whatever. It's based on personal experience in living through the revolutionization of an industry, the retail industry. Amazon really changed the game. And as you know, and again, an example, Amazon, but certainly Google also, we are changing the game in delivering computing power thanks to the cloud computing, right? Which is, the old way was like, in the Thomas Edison day where you had to have your own generator in your house, and then we invented power plants, which made a huge difference for the world, and that's what's happening in the computing industry with cloud computing. So I am an optimist because I do believe that the technology is really a solution of many of our problems. I also am aware that we need to have a humanistic view of technology. It's very important to work with the other science at Carnegie Mellon, or the social science, to be able to pay attention to the excess of technology or to the mistakes. But there have always been mistakes, but we also managed to work with them. And we made trains originally that was smoking the whole town because of steam, which was better already that the various waste deposited by the horses which were pulling the tracks before the steam. And then, of course, we managed to then use electricity to move trains, and we make train is a very efficient mode of transportation today. So I believe in the autocorrection. I believe in technology improving itself. I just want to conclude here. I love, and let me do a little commercial here for Tepper. I absolutely love our new motto of the intelligent future. That's exactly what I believe in. I'm very happy that our new dean, and I saw your background, Alan, and I should have put my background, but unfortunately, because of a technical problem, I can't use my video for the moment. I think that's exactly why I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic because of places like Carnegie Mellon, which are building the intelligent future.
Thank you. And that kind of leads me to the final question for everybody. Ted is next on the screen. Can you reflect a little bit on how attending CMU, Tepper, GSIA impacted your career and what the value of the alumni network has been for you?
Well, the alumni network is terrific. A session like this is great, and I look forward to following up with the fellow panelists on a number of these topics. And with Tepper and me, what it's done is the rigor of the course and the introduction to the future, what you're calling now the intelligent future. We had it in our way, with really the first school of management science. And what I've found is I'm certainly not a supply chain expert. I'm not an artificial intelligence expert. I'm not a big data expert, expert actually in few things. But what you learned at Tepper is how to think about a big problem, how to bring analytics and data towards it, how to break it down into manageable pieces. And that gives you the confidence to really work your way through any issue. And that has been an endearing benefit of Tepper.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. That is great. Melissa, your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think attending Tepper allowed me to build a much bigger professional network, of course, but it also opened my eyes to opportunities that I didn't even know existed. I remember taking this class at Tepper and we had to do a practice interview, and they gave us a list of roles to pick one, and I picked the Pathways program at Amazon. And, I was doing a bunch of research on the Pathways program so I could be ready for my practice interview. And I realized how interested I really was in that role. And prior to getting my MBA, I worked in manufacturing engineering, but I really liked the operations side. So after my MBA, I actually went into the Pathways program, and I really can thank Carnegie Mellon for that. So I think Carnegie brought me to Amazon. Amazon led me to Google. And with both these big networks, I've been able to talk to, a lot of alumni, learn more about the school, increase my network, and see what other opportunities are out there. And, it's more than just a professional network. It's really become a personal network too that I've really enjoyed over the years.
Yeah, I agree. I always tell people one of the best things about being a professor is sometimes having former students pop up one way or another. It is just one of these great things. Adam, your thoughts? Same question?
Yeah, so so a couple things. One is I think Ted and Melissa both hit on important aspects of this. When Ted talked about the intellectual rigor and how that helped him out, I certainly identify with that. A little memory for you. I remember back, I guess it was 1993, my first year there, sitting in John Hooker's OR class, looking at that really thick piece of chalk he used to use. Ted, you might have had that same experience. Melissa, I don't know if you took that same class, but when I think of intellectual rigor and problem solving in Tepper, I always think of that class and what we did there. So directly, absolutely, I have friends from my class of 1995 that we talk monthly, weekly, as it may happen, and the intellectual rigor. But I tell you, something that was perhaps an indirect, but very much a result of a Tepper education is learning the value of collaboration and getting things done as a team. I know there were certain classes and circumstances where we tried to be team oriented, but the nature of the students really wanted to work in that way. And collaboration is a force multiplier when you're trying to get something done in the business world. I suspect that spirit still exists at Tepper, and it was a lesson I've taken through my career.
Excellent. Thank you. The time has really flown. I want to thank you all for coming again and thank the participants and also for the questions. I will throw it over to John now to sign us off. We did have a question about a recording, so maybe you want to touch on that.
Yes, today's webinar is recorded and we will have it available to you. Normally it takes about a week or so to get through the process, but we look forward to sharing it with you and those of your colleagues who would like to see it as well. But let me thank Professor Alan Scheller-Wolf for his leadership of our call today and our amazing panelists. You guys did an awesome job. I think it shows the power of the network. When I look and take LinkedIn, for example, and look at just put in supply chain and Tepper, and you will have hundreds of alumni that show up. So we have a deep area of expertise in that, and I hope you take advantage of the network. Our apologies that we couldn't answer the dozens of questions that came in. Hopefully they touched on it during the call today, but we're really grateful to have you. Look forward to seeing you in a future webinar. So thank you to all who joined us, and especially thank you to our panelists today.